Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Change Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Tim McBride, and this is a platform where I like to invite local leaders, influencers, and agents of change to join me in conversation and help share their stories in hopes that we can inspire others. And I'm really excited about today's conversation because I've just gotten to know this woman, and she started an incredible business here locally called Witnessing Nature in Food. And I think it's a fascinating name because it's something, and platform, because it's an area that myself and my family are very invested in, that is nutrition and diet. And I'd love for Jennifer to introduce herself. She is the chef and founder of Witnessing Food in Nature and what she's built here over the last 20 plus years. And the story of how it all came together, I think, is so fascinating. And then touch on, how you've had to navigate this year, being a professional catering company and all the different channels that extend off of it, how you've had to not just embrace it, but pivot and adjust and find ways to continue to succeed and be of service to our community. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's been a pleasure to get to know you here recently, and I'm excited for you to share your story and what you built here in Witnessing for Food.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm super excited to be here. I was super honored when you guys called and asked me to be on the show. I really enjoyed it. So I am a chef for 26 years now, but originally I'm an engineer. So I became an engineer, and after I finished engineering school, I stayed home for a few days and to cook my kids dinner because I worked and raised them and went to school at the same time, and I made them food, and they came back and they said, "Mom, can you just make the stuff in the box or go out and get it? Because you really are awful at cooking."
They were that honest with you.
They were that honest. Yeah, my youngest is he's very direct.
There's so many said about that.
And he's still alive. He's 33 this year, so he is still alive. But it was also, he wrote it in a Mother's Day card, just an extra follow-up that I needed to go. So I went to culinary school. That's how I got to culinary school. And so I didn't have to take all the school classes because I already did all that stuff. I just had to learn how to cook, which I love cooking.
Okay.
I really love cooking. And so that's what we did when the kids grew up, is we spent a lot of time cooking and exploring foods, different cultures, different kinds of things, because we had lived a little bit in Korea, we had lived a little bit in the UK, Mexico, and just really for my business or for where I worked. And so I just really wanted to bring those different cultures around the world to my family.
Okay. When you got into it, so when you committed to culinary, was it a quick kind of aha moment in terms of, this is really where my passions are, my interests are, I'm going to pursue this the next? Because when you get a letter like that, I don't know if I would jump right into culinary school. I would be like, okay, how can I better myself? But I feel like there was something there in you that made you want to commit to that level of excellence in that field.
Well, I admit I was kind of angry for a few days. But then I thought about it, right? I thought about it a lot, and I said, my mom raised a bunch of kids on her own, worked a couple of jobs, and I helped her make sure that everybody did their homework and made it to school on time. And I did the cooking. So from the time I was 10 or 11 years old. And my mom was not a very good cook. And then I remember my grandmother not being a very good cook. My grandfather was a fantastic cook. However, he made a mess but my grandmother would never let him cook in the kitchen because of the mess she had to clean up. So I took it to heart and said, you know what, maybe I didn't come from anybody that really knew how to cook. My mother, however, is a fantastic baker. So she can make fudge and cookies and cakes and all that stuff that I can't do, that I don't like to do. But it's the fun with cooking is the fact that you can be creative. Yeah. You can go with a recipe, and if you don't like it, modify it to however you do like it.
Yeah. So what I love about your business is that you really play into the organic health side of food. A lot of people use the term that food is love in a lot of ways, but oftentimes what we eat doesn't necessarily love our body, and our bodies don't love the food, right? And you have created a platform here, and I think you're one of only a few, if not the only one, that really plays in the organic health and wellness space when it comes to nutrition.
We do 100% organic. So if we can't buy it organic, then we do make it organic. And actually we make, I would say 99% of all of our food we make from scratch. So we're a completely scratch kitchen, except for a few things that we don't sell very often, that it's much less expensive for us to buy it.
Okay. So wellness, nature, and food, when did that form? How did that come to?
Oh, probably more when we would taste food that you would go out and eat and taste food, and it wasn't necessarily as yummy as it looked, right? Okay. I think one of my big explanations is I went to go eat a profiterole and at a party one time, and it was beautiful, and I expected it to taste absolutely beautiful, right? And it was not. I spit it out. I mean, I don't think that you should waste the calories or energy eating food that doesn't taste good. And then when my kids were in high school, I had the biggest fight with the schools to get the soda machines out of the schools because the kids were drinking soda or taking the dollars that we gave them for lunch and spending it on crappy food. And it wasn't good for them. You could tell because they were sicker.
Guilty as charged. That's what, when we were kids, same thing. I'm from Canada, so I'll use the term pop. We had pop machines and Slurpees from 7-Eleven, the junk we would consume. And I look back now and go, I don't know how my parents allowed it, but they didn't. We did it when we weren't around them. And they would always make their best efforts to provide a nutritional meal, if you will. But I don't think over the years as I've come more understanding of the industry and the food and the processes to make the food and labeling. My wife is an RN, but she's also, since we had kids, really kind of pivoted her mission in health. And she didn't want to be a nurse anymore. And she wanted to so she took her interest in nutrition and became a nutritional therapy practitioner. And that was all stemmed by our firstborn and the ingredients that were in just the simplest of products for our daughter. And it scared the crap out of her. Literally to the point where she pivoted and is no longer wanting to be in the hospital setting, but use her passion for nutrition specifically and the ingredients that are in our products to help heal and potentially save our children for the future.
Yeah. I mean, really, I guess it'd probably be my generation, the fast food generation, the fat-free, the sugar-free, and the bliss factors, as they call it, right? Really, if it's fat-free, it has more sugar in it, so it tastes good.
Yeah.
And guess what? Sugar turns into fat if you don't use all those calories, right? And then sugar-free, they put fat in it to make it taste good, salt and all the other stuff. And so that's how they have a lot of more food chemistry involved in creating meals at restaurants and so on, as opposed to actually just using good ingredients in order to deliver a meal that will taste good.
And one thing I've seen through your website, because you're doing a lot of things, obviously you recognize primarily as a catering platform, but you're also an educator and a speaker, and you also do meal prep, which is great. And you really have a focus on children. And I think that is important.
Yeah.
Just being a father, what we put on our plate ends up always being a battle because our kids technically don't always want to eat what we put out there, but at least we have peace of mind what we're putting on the plate has a nutritional value and is good for them. And we're not giving them the Kraft mac and cheese that I used to have as a kid. Even though it tastes amazing, it's one of our sucker foods. But I love that you are doing that and love that your story of fighting the school. Because in just a few years our kids have been in school, we're already challenging, the diet that is available to them in the classroom. And the lack of, in a sense, I don't want to say respect, but appreciation for the food that our kids consume when they're at school. So what are you doing in the space of supporting maybe some questions that families have for their kids when it comes to nutrition?
So as you know, once you're in your 40s, it's harder to learn and change your habits. And so I really started to focus on kids because when they learn when they're young, then they'll take those habits into be adults. And so maybe it's not going to fix my generation or the next generation, but it will take the third generation, right? And it'll really bring back eating together, eating as a family, eating at home, and bring some more teamwork back into the family as well, right? So you share, because I think we've become too much of a fast food and generation, or just culture, the convenience, the culture, right?
Yeah.
And I fall into it sometimes too. I cook all day long, and when I come home, sometimes I don't want to cook for myself, but doesn't mean that I meal prep because I will have something there prepared for me. So really I started with the kids because I looked at the school lunch requirements, and if you were able to buy lunch, you got X number of calories. Kids really need between 750, especially as teenagers, 750 and 1,000, 1,200 calories a day, or in a meal, right? Especially their lunch meal. And the government food program says you get a piece of toast, a carton of milk, and maybe a vegetable or a fruit. Wow. And that's hardly enough to be able to focus in class. And we all know that if we eat better in school, then we do better in school.
Yeah.
You have a better chance of getting out of whatever environment that you happen to be stuck in.
So when you got in this, obviously culinary school, you start the business, did you start kind of in the schools with the kids, or was it more let's go into catering? Tell me a bit of the journey of the
I started
business?
off doing personal chefing. So we basically went out to people's houses and we cooked meals for them.
Okay.
And then they started saying, "Oh, I want you to cater a wedding. I want you to do this. I want you to do that." And so I'm like, "Oh, that's a different license." So then we started catering. And honestly, I got into school lunches because the guy called me one day from California and said, "Hey, we do healthy organic school lunches, and we want you to do them for us in Arizona."
Excellent.
And that's how I got into doing school lunches.
How many schools are you currently working with?
So we're doing
here?
7 schools right now.
Wow.
We started off with 3, and now we went 5, and now we're at 7.
And how's the response been?
It's been good, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been very good. This year's been a little slower adoption because kids are not coming back to school as fast.
Mm-hmm.
But we've started a couple of virtual rooms as well, so parents will come and pick up their lunches
Okay.
and take them back home.
You touched on a good point. This year has been a little different,
It's
right?
been interesting.
Interesting is a good term for
Adventure.
it.
I call it my adventure year.
And you had mentioned in our kind of side conversation where we started, events and contracts that you had in place early in this year that all in a matter of days basically was taken off the table. How have you personally and from a professional standpoint experienced this year, and how have you kind of absorbed it, and how have you just adjusted it and found ways to continue to stay, productive?
Well, I loved all of my employees. So I had 5 employees, and in order to let them go on, we ended up letting them go on unemployment, right? And
Okay.
be able to feed their families because I couldn't do it. I couldn't. All of our business basically dried up, and people said, "Oh, we're not having events anymore. No more weddings. No more
Wow.
anything." And then schools closed, so probably 60% of our business is schools.
Oh wow.
And so schools closed and the events dried up. So we basically pivoted into more meal prep, rolling out corporate catering. So now that people are starting to come back to work, we're providing lunches for them to be, because where we're at is in South Phoenix.
Okay.
And you have to drive 20 minutes in order to get to someplace healthy. Otherwise, there's the taco place on the corner, there's McDonald's, there's all very unhealthy restaurants close by if you want to get off site.
Yeah. And I think as a city or as a state, just diet or like organic diet, like healthy eating just doesn't seem to be as much of a priority as I would have expected to have been. Coming from Southern California for 12 years, you can't go a block almost in LA or San Diego without all organic type of restaurants, a farm to table type of concept, juice spots. I like Nectar's right down the way. Nectar's great, but none of their produce is organic.
Right.
So though you're drinking juice, you're not necessarily getting the value in what you think you're getting. You're getting cheaper produce and just marked up. It's a great first step, but it's not quite there. And I feel like Arizona, I was shocked when we came here 5 years ago that there wasn't more of that type of product available. And I feel like you're kind of leading the charge with your business.
So I've been here 32 years. This Thanksgiving, I'll be here 32 years. And it's much different now than it used to be.
Okay.
So it's evolved a great deal. However, I agree. I came from Southern California too, and it is not where it was 32 years ago, even in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are starting to get more boutique restaurants, which actually focus on sustainable fish, sustainable meats, and so on. So we're getting a lot more of that here that are not chains. But you're right. I mean, catering, for the most part, if you want to cater a meal, it's bulk food done inexpensively with a lot of service. Because in catering, most of the cost is not in the food itself, it's in the service that is provided.
Interesting.
Because the employees cost a lot more. When you're catering an event and it's plated, say you have 100 people, you have to feed 100 people all within 20 minutes. So they're all eating and getting finished about the same time, right? So that's a lot of serving that happens.
So do you turn into Gordon Ramsay during those events? Just going down the line, yelling, getting people to move, make sure everything's
No, we don't yell. So one of the reasons why I didn't join a restaurant when I opened my own business instead is because I really wanted to work for people that cared about how they ate.
Okay.
And I really wanted to have a healthy kitchen environment. In a lot of expensive restaurants, it is old French style where they yell, they throw stuff and so on, and I don't want that. I don't thrive during that.
Okay.
I don't think that people learn really well during that.
Yeah.
And I want it to be a team. I really want to bring back the family kind of thing in businesses.
I love it. So you're doing a lot you're doing a lot of different channels. The blog posts are super educational and informational for people. You're doing some meal prep and you're working in schools. how are you balancing all these different channels, especially now when it sounds like you're kind of a one person show?
We have 2 people, two and a
Okay.
half persons.
Okay.
Now we're back to growing. It's picking up a great deal, but it's a lot of hours because I really don't want to lay off again, right? So
Yeah.
and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we have like 2.5 persons and another contractor that comes and helps. And then I haven't even talked about the fact that the 2 charities that we started while we were off, because there was so much after everything closed. There was so much food available that was not going to any restaurants, not going to any schools, not because everything closed. It was going to go to the garbage.
Wow.
And there was a lot of homeless people out there, more homeless than ever. So we basically we started a fresh food collab that basically gathered all the food from those places and put them together and started handing out food boxes to people so the food wouldn't go to waste and people were able to eat.
That's incredible. I had no idea.
Oh yeah,
Like,
so
way
we
to
do
take
that.
an opportunity when it was presented, because it could have been very easy, obviously, to pull back and simplify and slow down, but obviously you saw a need and leaned in. Tell us, I'd love to learn more about that. Like how, where are you getting the food from? How can people get involved or support that? Because, people are hurting right now, and access to food
Yeah.
is something that is vital in some circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really kind of the brainchild of Dory Morales from Green Living Magazine and
Okay.
Mike from Agave Farms. So we're really, they started going, hey, what can we do? And then they brought in myself and Lori from Amici Catering. And we said, we can cook food, we can bring food together. And so we basically just kind of went out and gathered food. St. Mary's provides some food, Mike buys some food, we get some food donated.
Okay.
And we basically build 25, 30-pound boxes of food a couple times a month, and we provide it to families.
Wow.
Right now we're doing Levine School District. Levine is hurting really hard.
Okay.
And so we do Levine School District twice a month.
Okay.
We do about 1,600 boxes of food for those guys. And then we do hit churches and any other place that we can possibly get to.
And we'll make sure that there's information, resources after this show where people can connect to that.
Absolutely. They can volunteer. We do it 3 times a month. I mean, absolutely volunteer and help hand out food, gather food, build food boxes, whatever it takes.
And I think, the title of my show is Change Agent. It's really about people kind of going beyond the expectations of what their daily responsibilities or role, depending on, who the person is. And it really can be available to anyone. I kind of play with the agent term because I'm in real estate, but it's really to everyone. And you're absolutely one of those. And that's why it's an honor to have you on the show. And in this time, it's been amazing to see how many people have just leaned into this unknown and this uncertainty and this time of, of pain and hurt, and found ways to be of service and to give back and utilize what they have in their sphere or in their circle to be of value. And hearing stuff like that is super inspirational. And that's the purpose of this show, that even in tough times, we can still find opportunities to give back or be of
Yeah,
to support.
absolutely.
So,
And here locally in Phoenix too, there's Feed Phoenix product that the city of Phoenix is funding with Local First Arizona and with all the local restaurants, and we're providing food to the homeless as well. So I mean, there's a lot of people trying to feed, and that's what I know how to do is feed people.
yeah.
And I have manufacturing experience, so I can figure out how to produce it really quickly. So I just try to use all my skills together to help.
I love it. And thank you for sharing that. And you said 2 foundations. Was there another one that you
No,
started?
no.
Thought I
I
heard you say
teach
2.
healthy cooking on a budget at a New Leaf.
Oh, okay.
So I've always done that. So that's always been a New Leaf is my charity. They do homelessness and domestic violence.
Awesome. Fair. I'm familiar with them. And again, we'll make sure that, their information is available too, that more people are
They're
seeing.
on my website too, yeah.
Excellent. So what does a day in the life look like for you, Jennifer? Are you in the kitchen early, meal prepping, like what are we doing? Like, I would love to learn. And what is your kind of go-to ingredients? What is your go-to menu? And in addition to that, where I believe you're sourcing most things locally, but where are we sourcing the food so people can really understand just the story behind, what you're building, what you're doing?
Oh, so we get in the kitchen early. So when we're super busy, like last year, we would be in the kitchen at 4:00 in the morning because we start meal deliveries about 10. For some of the schools, we have infants, and so the toddlers and infants eat at 10:30ish.
Okay.
They get their first snack, and then with high schoolers eat a little bit later. So we just kind of hit the gamut all the way around. But then we meal prep. We have meal preps that would deliver in the afternoon, in the evening, or people pick up. Now we have the corporate catering, so people come and pick up lunches that way. And then we cater. So it just basically, it could be Mondays and Tuesdays, Wednesdays, maybe a little bit slower, but went Thursday through Sunday were really, really big festival or group eating days for people. And still for the most part are, even though it's slower in the smaller groups.
Yeah.
But we get our chicken from Mary's in Gilbert.
Nice.
Mary's has Mary's chicken, Mary ducks, and Mary's turkeys. Double Check Ranch is our beef supplier. Then we have different farms around the valley, as well as we buy from mostly Peddler's Son.
Okay.
So we tried that with that, and then we have like microgreens and stuff that we throw in, other herbs and so on that are grown locally that we put in. But we try to stick with those basic, chicken, beef, and I'd probably say we don't do very many pork dishes or things like that. We have a lot of Middle Eastern customers that pork is not a staple for them, so they don't eat that.
And you mentioned early on that you've traveled a lot. And you've tried to incorporate a lot of just different cultures into your cuisine. What is your favorite cuisine?
I love French food.
Okay.
Because probably France was the first time I actually sat down and had a meal. And even though people say, they've only put a little bit of food on the plate, but it's very satisfying. You get all those flavors and so on, and you don't walk away feeling like you have to stuff yourself to feel full.
Yeah.
And so I always enjoy French food because the different flavors you get, even though it could be very saucy, very buttery, and things like that. I find that I eat, and I do better when I eat French food than I do a lot of others. And a lot of American food, unfortunately, because it's not really great ingredients, you basically find yourself eating to excess in order to feel satiated or full.
Yeah. So what would you advise someone on in terms of how to shop, how to pick produce or certain categories of food for their diet so that they can feel like they're making wise decisions? Because I think a lot of people don't understand, or they just take the labeling for granted. They assume by what
marketing's
they're
a huge number. Marketing's a huge thing. There's a lot of untruth in the marketing. I always liked, but it's never blatantly said, right? It's just, as an example, a milk commercial, milk naturally from a cow. I'm like, well, where else would it come from?
Yeah.
But you use that word natural, and everybody goes, oh, it's wonderful. And that's not necessarily a true statement.
Correct.
I mean, arsenic's natural too.
Yeah. That's a whole other conversation.
Exactly, right. And it's organic.
Yeah.
So,
There you go. There you go. But and I think we're so quick to trust organic too, right? We've been kind of trained to believe if organic's on something, then it's potentially a quality and greener quality, something we should be eating.
There's a lot of people that ride the line of any certification program. You just have to, that's why I like local, because you can talk to your farmers. You see them at the farmer's market, and you can talk to them, and they'll tell you exactly what they do to they're very proud of what it is that they produce.
Yeah.
And there's some people that farm organically, but they never went through the certification because it would raise the price of their organic produce so much that they would never be able to sell it.
And just to get that certification, I could be way off, but it takes a couple of years.
It is not a fast thing. It is not a fast thing at all.
So if that's your livelihood, you can't shut your day-to-day operations down and wait. You got to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And there's obviously loopholes people can take. It's something for us is with our children is really, and I've seen it too, that food can really heal. Like family members, like we've fought off already allergies. We fought off a lot of inflammation, and my wife, who like I said, she's a registered nurse, but she's also NTP, and she's had some health issues, and she's created a platform called the Holistic Nurse, and it's basically very just authentic way of her to document how she cooks and how we eat, and she talks about issues she's had and how food and diet has exponentially helped her.
Absolutely true statement.
And I think it's amazing and needs to be more mainstream, that the choices we make in terms of the ingredients we eat have such powerful impact on our bodies. And it's sad to me oftentimes that we are quick just to rely on the pharmaceutical world, to fix our problems when we've got so many great resources.
Doctors know everything, right?
But they're taught. But I would never question a doctor because their intentions are all in the right spot.
I agree.
In all of this downtime, we've watched some amazing documentaries and gone down some rabbit holes, but nutrition is not something that is regularly taught in the curriculum of becoming a doctor or a nurse. And my wife was a 4.0 Dean's List at NYU, and she didn't take one class on nutrition. And it's sad because, their intentions are to help, but when you're not trained, then you're never going to provide that as a potential solution to a client and or a patient on some level. So I just wish and I see it in you, that we'd have really that level of respect for our diet, for nutrition, and the choices we make and what we eat. And there are ways around it, and not having it be so expensive, or some of maybe the stories we tell ourselves and why we don't.
True. And I would probably suggest that people that shop more than once a week, if you go shopping and you buy, $600 worth of food on Sunday, when you get to Friday, you don't want to see some of that food. You don't even know what you wanted to eat.
Yeah.
So we shop multiple times a week.
Wow.
Absolutely. When you kind of go in, they always say don't go to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah.
Because you buy stuff.
Yeah.
I would say go hungry, but pick good things.
Yeah.
Don't buy ice cream and popcorn and.
In all moderation, and treat yourself, right?
You can do that once in a while, but not.
Yeah.
Don't buy 80 pounds of ice cream and expect you're going to eat that for dinner every night.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of, I like to use ice cream, so that's kind of my.
And eat from the rainbow. I mean, don't eat the one thing that you like. Don't eat broccoli every day.
Yeah.
Eat some peppers, eat some tomatoes, eat some carrots, eat a little bit of everything.
Awesome. With that, is there I'd love for people to be able to contact you and ask you questions based off of these things, because I think more people need access to it, and you're really leading the charge here in our city. So what are some of the best ways that people can contact either you directly? Do you want them going to the website? What are some options that they have?
Yeah, they can absolutely go to the website and kind of get an overview of what it is that we're doing. Witnessingnature.net.
Mm-hmm.
Witnessingnature.com is not available, but nobody's using it, so I haven't figured that one out yet. So we are witnessingnature.net.
Okay.
Instagram, you can see all the pictures of our food and the different things that we do. Hey, just call me, email me. Our phone number and emails on the website. Just get involved. Be inspired by what it is you can do. A lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for me, when I was younger, I would watch my mom bake all day, right? And my grandmother would bake all day. And food's not that hard. You can use 5 ingredients and be eating in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You just have to get over past the fact that it could take, you think in your mind that it could take a long time to make a good meal. It really doesn't have to. That's
a good point. So 2 questions for you. One, it might be tough to ask because every day is kind of a new day right now. It's hard to really plan. But with every new build, like what's next for you? What's next for the business, or some of the different channels you're expanding on or trying to play in? Like where are we going from here?
Oh, well, I thought I was doing what's next right now with all the pivoting we've done this year. It's kind of been a thing. So I want to expand, more corporate catering and really help people understand that I really want to keep the momentum going of organic food. I think that this pandemic has really helped people slightly start to figure out that food is important and being healthy is important.
Yeah.
And I would like that to continue versus this being we're only going to do it while everybody's getting sick or everybody's concerned about being sick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a message to really not put so much weight in marketing or fast food, and be really present with what you're doing and present with what you're eating, and spending time with your family, because I think we kind of got a little bit disconnected.
Absolutely.
In that aspect. And now you hear whenever everybody first got back, was stuck at home with everybody, they're like finding out they don't like each other.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sad stories that are a byproduct of having to quarantine, stay at home. And one thing that that's probably another topic, because there's so many channels that need some attention that are pretty dangerous. But one thing I heard early on were these kids that depend on school to eat.
Yeah.
And that was a topic I heard over and over again. And just by hearing you with the nonprofit, and again, I'd love to get that information again, making that available is huge, because we were dependent on certain institutions to allow certain parts of our community to be able to eat.
Yeah, and I don't think that everybody quite realized that a lot of people with lower income really are more, what's the word I'm looking for, are more impacted by a pandemic like this, where food scarcity is a problem, because people see them eat. But there's, 2 of the charities that we provide food to, 80% of their kids don't go home to a meal at night. So we make food, or any of our leftovers get made into food so that they can take them home in the evenings.
Wow.
Right. So I think there's a much more large awareness of the fact that that is going on in our community here locally. And
Wow.
I think that people are starting to take note of that.
So with that, last question before we kind of wrap up here, because we could go all day. I want people to listen. Attention spans are short, so we try to keep around the 30 minutes. But I really appreciate everything you're doing. And as someone that's only been here 5 years, I feel like I'm still learning the landscape in terms of just types of cuisine that are available, types of restaurants, farmers market. Coming from California, in LA and San Diego, where we were for 12 years, there's always a farmers market. They're full of options. Where do you prefer to shop? What are some of the farmers markets that you love to explore? Like, where should you guide people for shopping purposes, or restaurants that really kind of tie into your values when it comes to food and eating and nutrition?
So I live in Old Town Scottsdale, so there's a Scottsdale market, but it's only October to May.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have a ton of produce. It's gotten a lot of, salsa manufacturers, pasta, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do sell eggs and things out of there. A lot of food trucks too. So my favorite, and I think the best one is so far, is Uptown Market on Bethany Home and, or is it, Bethany Home and 7th or Central-ish area.
Okay.
That's kind of my favorite. It's huge.
Oh, good.
And they run year round. So they're at the Baptist church. So in the summertime, they're inside the church.
Okay.
And they just last week went outside.
Excellent.
So they're outside. They have tons of tents, and they now are doing social distancing, whereas tents used to be all next to each other. Each one of the tents is 6 feet away from every next tent, and so on. So and people are there with masks, and they have entertainment, and you can bring the kids, and they have food trucks. They have healthy food trucks as well.
Nice.
So I like Uptown Market the most, and actually that's where I generally pick up my beef if I order it there, because they're in Winkleman.
Okay.
Double Check Ranch in Winkleman, so I'll just call them if they can't deliver because I'm going to be catering or doing something. Then I'll have somebody pick it up from them there.
And what's your favorite restaurant in town?
Oh, wow. That's like asking me my favorite movie.
What are your top three?
Top three. If I want to have a pizza, honestly, Craft 64 in Old Town Scottsdale.
Yeah, I know it well.
Craft 64 is probably my favorite place. I know the owners; they're fantastic, just down the street.
Okay.
As far as fancy food, I would say Elements at the Sanctuary.
Okay.
Resort. Oh, and then there is the Italian Butcher on Tatum. What is that called? Is it called the Sicilian Butcher?
Sicilian Butcher, yeah.
Yeah. That one's really nice too. Yeah.
Some good options. That's what's so neat about the cities, is there's so many options available, and it's so spread out. Sometimes it can be hard to find them. So I always love hearing recommendations, because options are close by, but if you are willing to travel a bit, you find some great restaurants, great menus, and it's nice to see healthy options in all of them.
Right. Cafe Monarch in Old Town. That one, fantastic. He's got a great concept.
Fan of Farm and
it's
Craft.
a great Farm and Craft. Yeah.
That one. There's so many good ones, right? And that's what's great. Well, Jennifer, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. I enjoy being here.
And I really want people to pay attention to what Jennifer's doing and take a look at Witnessing Nature and Food. Follow her website. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of information on it. And, I just appreciate nutrition so much in my life. So I always, find it awesome to have conversations with people that kind of share those same values. And it's fun to watch you doing it from a professional standpoint in a city that I think there's a lot of potential for growth in.
Phoenix is awesome, isn't it? I love
really
it here.
is.
Yeah.
And with the weather, how active of a lifestyle we are, I think nutrition is such a complementary piece. And hopefully, as people listen to this, they'll be drawn to the different links that we'll share of how to get in touch with you, or different organizations you're supporting, or platforms that they can connect with you on and learn from. But it's been a pleasure, and you've got a fan here, and I know before I actually get on this, my wife wanted me to ask if you do meal prep and deliver to the home, because with
we do, absolutely.
With 3 kids, that is something
absolutely.
that we've tried in the past, and it's been great, but we're always looking for other solutions to help just manage the chaos.
That's another thing that we did is family meals. So now for school lunches, when you can order a family meal and pick it up like on Friday and take it home, and you have a Friday dinner, you don't have to worry about things like that. So we have a family meal menu now too. But basically, we just really wanted to make sure that we are giving more than taking away from the whole environment, world, and so on. So that's why, that's kind of why we do what we do, is we really want to be helpful.
Awesome. Well, you are on a lot of ways, and keep doing it. And I just appreciate this conversation, and hopefully, there's an audience that's going to capture a lot of information out of it. And if you have one last bit of advice for anyone that wants to get into the culinary world, what would it be from your experiences?
Enjoy cooking. Because if you don't enjoy cooking and you don't enjoy, then your food's going to taste awful, because you really have to pour your love into it. I really think that anything you do, you have to really want to do.
I love it.
Especially when it comes to food, because, if you don't like doing it, then you're going to not pay enough attention to it. And food is delicate.
Yeah.
Food
absolutely.
is delicate.
Well, I love that. So let's close with that, because that was perfect. So everybody, Jennifer Johnson, chef, founder of Witnessing Nature and Food. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Please follow her and pay attention to what she's doing.